Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Paul Quinney and Dayton Reimer as usual. It's been a while since the three of us have been together. It was, I think, 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago that we did some trivia. There's been a little bit of Senators news. It's been fairly quiet over this month in terms of the Senators stuff, but over the past week or so, we've gotten quite a few things. So, first of all, the Ottawa Senators signed Nick Cousins to a 1 year, $800,000 deal. Already have Brady Tkachuk and Ridley Gregg, of course, and then they bring in David Perron, and now they bring in Nick Cousins. This team is going to be tough to play against. I'm going to save my thoughts for the end, see if either of you touch on it. Dayton, what are your quick thoughts on the signing?
I like Cousins. Like he's kind of the worst, but I like him for the Senators, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I think he will mesh very well with uh at least what the team is kind of building around, which is Brady Tkachuk, right? He doesn't take a ton of penalty minutes, but he is physical. He gets under guys' skins. Um, and that's someone that Ridley Gregg has been described as, right? So I think you have a mentor now in Nick Cousins and someone who would mesh well um, with this core. And I think, yeah, it's that this is a move that you make when you want to compete. You don't add this kind of guy when it's still rebuilding and let's wait it out. Let's try to get some, veterans to add some leadership and some skill. No, like he's a veteran, yes, but this guy makes you unbelievably tough to play against. And that's a competitive move. So I think this is very clearly the Senators are aiming for the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, the only thing I'd add to what Dayton said is, if you look at the lineup, projected lineup, all four lines are going to have a veteran, and three of those veterans have won Stanley Cups. So I think that bodes well for the Senators. I was just thinking again, Steos said, I'm going to add a veteran presence to this team. And wow, did he ever? I thought he might have stopped at Perron, but he kept going. So good marks for Mr. Steos this summer, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I strongly agree. We talked about it a couple times before. That it's important to choose a direction when you have two superstar players in Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk. You can make one of them fit in the system that fits the other player better. I think you were kind of preaching that, Dayton, and so we have. This is now a Brady Tkachuk team, and there's a lot of players that play Brady Tkachuk's game, and Tim Stützle is going to fit in really well. And as the skill guy, as the go-to skill guy on the team, when Pierre Dorion couldn't pick whether he wanted to build a fast skilled team or a tough and gritty team like Brady Tkachuk plays. So it's nice to see that Steve Staios finally picked a direction. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Dayton?
No, I completely agree with what you're saying there. You need to have a clear goal, and that will reflect in the dressing room. I think for the longest time, the Senators didn't have a great dressing room because they didn't know what they were. They didn't have an identity because, oh, are they Brady Tkachuk? Are they Tim Stützle? Are they somebody else? Nobody really wanted to make that choice. But I think the team made that choice and then just waffled on it, right? They picked Brady Tkachuk fourth overall when he shouldn't have gone fourth overall, according to projections. Now he probably goes higher than that, right? He was the perfect pick for the Senators at that time. And he's supposed to be the face of the franchise. Tim Stützle is fantastic. Definitely one of my favorite guys, maybe ever on the Senators. Love him with the team. He's, I don't think somebody you build around. I think you add him to make the team even better. And I think last season might have shown that a little bit with the dip when the Senators weren't as competitive. That could be, just some growing pains, but I think this is a very clear, step in a direction that you are building around Brady. This is the team you want to build. And this is the culture that we want to establish. And there won't be any more kind of waffling. We have a clear direction, a clear identity, and that's what the Senators needed, I think, to be a competitive team.
So
Yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead, Paul.
Well, no, I was just going to say, let me throw a question out here then, gentlemen. You got a team here that's building the image of Brady Chuck. Where's Norris fit into this thing?
On LTIR.
Yeah, he's
Good.
he's a bit more of a like a Tim Stützle build, right? He's a fast skill player, and you kind of got to wonder, is that going to fit in long term? For now, it's great. If he plays, he makes the team better. But does he have a long-term future with it, especially as the team gets, a bit more hard-nosed, a bit more, scrappy, a bit more pesty? Because I don't see that in Norris unless I've been missing something.
No, I don't see that
No,
in Norris either. But one thing that a lot of people overlook is Norris's defensive game. I think that he's very underrated defensively.
Hmm.
And he's a really good option at the second line center if he's healthy and playing at the 35 goal strong two-way player that he was a couple years ago. But with that being said, you got Shane Pinto, who might be able to fill that void, which makes Josh Norris expendable. And Pinto does play with a little bit more bite in his game than Josh Norris does. So if you can find a way to kind of slide Shane Pinto into Josh Norris's spot and move on from him, if it makes sense, yeah, I think that you would like to have Shane Pinto and $8 million over Josh Norris as the second line center. That's just my thoughts.
No, I think you probably hit the nail on the head there. That's Norris is great, but is he $8 million great? And
Healthy,
I
we
think,
don't know. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. He just needs to stay healthy. One thing that I see a lot of people saying is that with this Nick Cousins signing, this team is going to be the everybody's least favorite team to play against. And I said, I put this on Twitter. I said it doesn't matter how physical and tough they are if they're not going to win games. This team is not going to be the most hated team in the league if they're 23rd in the standings. They need to win hockey games, or else this all does not matter. And that's been the issue with the Senators over the last few years. They just haven't won hockey games. For a few years to start the rebuild under DJ Smith, it was this team is hard to play against. Every team was giving them credit in the post game every night. And then the last few years that kind of fell apart. The team lost their identity. Because believe it or not, like Josh Brown, Braden Coburn, Eric Branson, these guys were all part of the identity. They sucked to play against. They weren't good defensively. That's why Ottawa lost many games. But they were physical, they were tough, and all that kind of stuff. And Ottawa got away from that. And it's very apparent that Pierre Dorion did not have a long term plan. And so I think it's all a moot point if Ottawa doesn't win any games. And like you said, Dayton, the signing indicates that they're serious about contending. You can be as serious as you want. It's the players that do the work from now on.
no, for sure. It's the season is definitely going to be defined by, can they win? And if they can't, that's going to, I think, put a ton of pressure on Steve Staios. Like, we're going to have to ask maybe some very difficult questions if this team suddenly just can't win, because these have been moves to win. I think you could have got better players, skill wise, for the prices that they paid, but they didn't do that. They went for, role players, guys who fit a very specific identity and a very specific, type of team. You don't trade Jacob Chychrun for Nick Jensen unless you have a very clear idea of what you want. And I think that was a good trade, but I don't think you got a better player than Jacob Chychrun, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're a better team with Nick Jensen than Jacob Chychrun. He's not the better player, but you're a better team.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with David Perron, right? He's a great player, but you could have got someone, I think, maybe more skilled for the amount of money that you spent. I think it's the same thing with Nick Cousins. You maybe could have got somebody who was more skilled. And I even threw an article out there, what about Philip Zadina? He has more skill than Nick Cousins, but is he a better player on this team? Arguably not, because Cousins is here and Zadina is in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's a great point. Paul, do you have anything else to add on the Nick Cousins signing?
Well, I don't know when all this winning is going to happen. Steve Stais at a press conference this week never mentioned one time the playoffs. So, I know there's a lot about lofty expectations in Ottawa. There always is in September, but even he's not going out on a limb and predicting playoffs. So, I think that expectations need to be tempered. Despite all the additions, it's going to be a really tough thing for them to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, you say that, but I think it's playoffs or bust this year. I think
Mm.
very good chance that Brady Tkachuk wants to go if they don't make the playoffs. Claude Giroux's not going to re-sign. This team might have to go through another rebuild. Like we might be looking at another Buffalo Sabres situation here, where it's been so long and unsuccessful. Like you look at the Sabres, they drafted so many good players like Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, a few other good players, and they didn't work for them, so they had to redo it and go through it all again. Ottawa might be in a similar position if they don't make the playoffs this year. Even if they're 5 points out, it's just another year that you're done in the beginning of April. They're not going to stand for it.
Well, as long as they're not done by the end of November, and that's been the case in the last few years, right?
Yeah.
So, well, we shall see quickly. I wrote a piece talking about again, they've got a really tough schedule. It's going to be challenging for the first 2 months, and I think we'll get a glimpse of just whether or not they're playoff bound within the first 8 weeks of the season.
There was a piece, a graphic posted by, I have no idea who. I'd like to credit if I could. But it was talking about the most travel for each team. And I believe Ottawa had the least amount of travel among all teams over the course of the season. So, which makes sense. I mean, they're fairly central to the entire league, but they had the least amount of travel or very close to it.
Well, in the first October, November, I think they've only got one road trip, 3 games out west, easy games, and then they come back. Most of the games are in the Eastern time zone, and there's a rhythm to it. Unlike last year, it's going once every other day, which I guess is the ideal schedule for an NHL team. A game every other day. So, yeah, it's definitely more favorable than it was last year.
All right. Moving off of all that, the playoffs and Nick Cousins and whatnot. There's been some not really news, but some updates about LeBreton Flats and the Senators moving to a downtown location. Again, not too much to build off of, but the decision is going to have to be made by the end of this month. And I just want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Paul, I know you wrote a piece about saying how LeBreton is not the answer. Dayton, I'm not sure if I've heard your opinion on things. But Paul, I'm going to ask you first, just like, what are your whole thoughts on should Ottawa move to LeBreton Flats? Does it make sense? What do you think?
Ideally, sure, they should move downtown. That would be great. But there's a whole bunch of things that they've got to get over. And I don't think LeBreton Flats is the place. You've got major issues. No parking down there. Access to that site via road, even if there were parking, is very poor. You don't have any major thoroughfares. I think the NCC is the National Capital Commission, who owns that property. They expect the Senators to rely on the light rail system in Ottawa, which is notoriously bad.
That's as reliable as the Senators.
Yeah, I mean, it's awful. It stops working when it gets too hot in the summer, and golly gee, I don't know who designed it, but when it gets too cold in the winter, it stops working. So, and what's Ottawa? The second coldest capital in the world. So, major design flaw there. But all of that to say, if you're the Senators, it's a nightmare. If you had a big playoff game and 20,000 of your fans are trying to get there, and the rail system didn't work, that's just not on. And then the other thing is they want an arena district, kind of the same thing that Edmonton has, but it doesn't look like there's any provision being made in terms of land for that to be constructed. And you've got environmental considerations. I think to use the property, there's massive amounts of money you'd have to spend to remediate all the contaminated soil, remove it, and whatnot. And then I think the biggest kicker here is going to be money. And again, I don't blame the senators. One or all three levels of government are going to have to come together and they're going to have to give Mr. Andlauer and the other owners of the team a whole pile of money. I think it's about $1 billion. I think that's the price tag now for a new arena anywhere in the league. And I don't know how that's going to get done politically. So I wouldn't hold my breath on downtown, certainly not LeBreton Flats. What makes me wonder too is the tone of Cyril Leader. He's coming out making noises. Well, there's still a long way to go, or words to that effect. We've made a little bit of progress. There's still a lot of work to be done. If this deal were close and it's got to be done in 2 weeks, I don't think he wouldn't be saying much. It would be in the bag and just cross the T's, dot the I's. But so I think they're far apart.
Yeah, I think that's a very good case of like Craig Oster's negotiating in the media, trying to um, get something to happen because it doesn't look like it is. That's what it sounds like to me as well, Paul. I'm not sure how often you go to games, but I'm in Nova Scotia, Dayton's in Saskatchewan. You're the only Ottawa native here. Is Kanata really that bad?
Oh, it's terrible trying to get out of the parking lot.
Yes, it
And
is terrible
oh,
getting out of the parking lot. But is like you could do renovations and changes to make the parking lot a better system. But is from Ottawa to Kanata really that bad of a situation?
no, I mean, I may have to go into a witness protection program if I say what I'm about to say, but come on, Ottawa, you're spoiled. I mean, when we talk traffic jams and commutes in Ottawa, it's ridiculous. It means 20 minutes. Go to any other major city in North America, and you're talking an hour or more. It's not that bad a commute. Um, the other thing too, though, is in January I try to avoid games because you have to walk in from the back 40, and by the time you get into the arena, you're suffering from hypothermia. So,
Yeah.
it's not pleasant, but given all the alternatives, it's not bad. And I know the people in Gatineau, they're trying to pry them away from the Montreal Canadiens, and they'll say, well, the people in Gatineau is going to Kanata is too far. To which I would ask, what? And Montreal's closer? I mean, come on,
Right.
that's a 3-hour drive. Don't give me that. But
Well, and so
and
I went up in October last year for a home opener, and it was my first time actually driving through the city to get to the game, and it wasn't that bad. Like it's from what is it, from downtown Ottawa, or whatever they call downtown. It's about half an hour to get to the rink.
yeah,
That's not bad. Like from anywhere in Edmonton, you're probably half an hour from the rink with traffic and everything. Um, or in Fort Lauderdale. Well, in Sunrise, I know that the rink, Amaranth Bank Arena, is not in a great place either. But you're not right there. If they could develop more around Kanata, like there's not much there. There's like what, an Ultramar across the street from the rink, a couple of shops and everything. But if they could develop more and have more of like an event district, kind of like you were talking about with Edmonton, it would be great. Like it's just there's just nothing to do in Kanata.
well, yeah, but in defense of Canada, and by way of full disclosure, that's where I live. But
Fair enough.
They well, people that would come out. People would track that down. But objectively, Kanata is the high-tech center. It's probably one of the biggest high-tech centers in all of Canada. The income is here. The
Yeah.
companies are here. These are the people, these are the company that buy the boxes and can afford to pay the ticket prices. Why would you want to leave a market like that to go downtown? Because I
Right.
don't think you're going to replace it. Civil servants, the civil service, I should not civil servants, the civil service generally, they don't buy boxes. It's not in the budget, but the companies in Canada do. So you alienate them at your peril.
Yeah. If they could build, I don't know what the zoning is like over there, but if they could build like some good clubs and bars and some good restaurants right close to the rink, like I think it would be good. And so my experience there was I spent the day in Ottawa, and then drove out to Kanata. Didn't mind it at all, mind you. My perception was a bit skewed after driving 16 hours to get to Ottawa. Um,
Mm.
so a half hour felt like nothing. And then I left the game and I went to Arm Prior to stay with some family, and it was a fine experience outside of just getting out of the parking lot. Like we were in the parking lot for almost an hour trying to get out. It was horrible, but that can be fixed somehow. I'm not an engineer or architect or whatever, but I didn't mind the location at all, and I've been kind of sitting on that for the last years. Is it really that bad?
No, it's but like I say, there are massive hurdles to moving out of the West End, out of Kanata to go downtown. The cost of construction, building a new arena, and like I say, no NHL owner of which I am aware uh, builds a new rink on their own nickel. The government step up. Like, give me one example of an NHL owner that's built his own rink. And I can tell you, there's a whole lot of people in Ottawa. These aren't my words, but saying, "Look, we're not giving billionaire owners money to build a rink so a bunch of kids can shoot rubber pucks around." I mean, it's not going to fly politically. So
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So anytime you want to come to to Canada, Jacob, you can stay at my place and we can take an
perfect,
Uber.
perfect. Dayton, have you been to Canada? Have you been to the rink?
No, I've never been able to get out there. I've been to Ottawa twice, but it's been probably decades since I've been out there. It was some fun family trips. A lot of what you guys are saying though does kind of strike a chord from some of the arenas I've been able to visit on my WHL journey. So, for those who don't know, I'm trying to see all 22 WHL arenas. I've seen 5 so far because the WHL is annoyingly spread apart. It's way more spread out than the OHL or the QMJHL. You can just go see those all over. It's not that hard. Whereas in Saskatchewan, I'd have to go drive to Seattle to see a game. Anyways, I was at, of course, the Saskatoon Arena. They have an arena that is outside of the city, pretty much. Getting out of the arena when the game is done, even in a WHL market, takes forever. Not an hour forever, but you're basically waiting there until everyone else leaves. And so I just hang out and watch for the 3 stars and wait till everyone else, okay, you can go. Yeah, good. Cool. It's not popular. People don't like driving out there, even though it's hardly a drive. There is plans to set up a downtown arena and make one of those districts. Parking is going to be a nightmare, like you guys mentioned. But I mean, Calgary has a downtown arena, essentially, right? And I was there in March, I believe. It was not hard to find, just a random parking spot, and then we just walked to the arena. It was very easy. I mean, you get outside a little bit, and sure, during the winter, not so fun, but in March, the weather was beautiful. Nice walk. Didn't have to go through too many crowds. So I don't know if it's a massive issue, and it does seem to be that that transition of at one point it was moving all the arenas outside of the city center. Now we're bringing them back in, and those that are outside of it are struggling. So one that is definitely, it's hurt by its location is the Medicine Hat Tigers. They decided in 2015, I believe, to build an arena basically 5 minutes once you leave the city limits. It is it is not in Medicine Hat. I think even like technically it's not in Medicine Hat, but it's a beautiful arena, all of the state of the art stuff. And it's annoying to get to. And then trying to get out, you have one highway that's all clogged up because that's the only exit that you have. The parking lot, it's huge, but it's designed really poorly in that it's tough to get out of that too. So they have, some significant issues that they very recently put in.
One of the problems in Ottawa is, the downtown core has been decimated, and that's because civil servants are not working. They're working from home for the most part, and you can fire a cannon down most streets in downtown Ottawa, and you wouldn't hit a bar that's open. There's boarded up restaurants and bars everywhere. I mean, that's what the city, the mayor is that's the value he's placing on trying to get the senators to move downtown. It would be a way to reinvigorate the central core. But, I don't think that's going to change. I think civil servants working from home the majority of their time is that's going to be permanent. So, I don't know that there would be bars and restaurants for people to go to downtown. Certainly, the number of, what are there, 41 games, that's it, that the Senators play in Ottawa. And I don't think that number of games would be big enough to support a renaissance of bars and restaurants that closed during the pandemic. So,
well, then I just think one of the biggest pieces of feedback you hear from players, and I believe it was Nick Jensen that said it. He's like, I've never even seen Ottawa because we don't go to Ottawa to play games. Like, I've never been in the city of Ottawa. And that's one of the issues that some players have. But again, if you get more of a, like, I don't know if you remember the plan that the Coyotes owner, I'm blanking on his name.
Marullo?
Yes, Morello.
Morello.
The plan that he had was to build a big event plaza. And while it was very far-fetched and he didn't have the money to do it, and I'm not talking about the water parks that he was talking about, but like just all the event stuff, like have a good place for concerts, like outdoor concerts. Have a couple venues there and have the bars and the clubs and the whatever, the players can enjoy stuff while they're in Ottawa, while they make the trip to Kanata. There's just nothing for them to do, and you kind of have to tend to the players' needs in a sense, while obviously looking for the fans. The fans would enjoy the an outdoor venue and maybe some sports plexes and bars and whatever it might be. You just need to make it more of an appealing location around the rink. I know the rink needs upgrades on its own, which Ann Lauer's done a good job of doing since he arrived, so I'm told. But you just need to improve the area around it. And that's not Michael Anlauer's job, but it should be the city of, well, I don't know how that really works. If the city of Ottawa would build out there, probably not, because it's not technically in their city, but some sort of partnership between municipal and provincial and the team working something out.
well, we're going to see. Put it this way, bring a Stanley Cup to Ottawa, and there will be plenty of people only too happy to enjoy the amenities of Kanata. They'll be having tailgate parties out in the 75 acres that surround the Canadian Tire place, and I don't think you'll hear very many complaints about people having to go all the way to Kanata, 30 minutes to
You didn't hear
watch.
anything about Amerant Bank Arena in Florida after they just won the cup.
Nope,
Not a word.
not
Nobody minds.
And and that's the other thing I hear criticism or the argument is, well, can you imagine what would happen to ticket sales? They'll go through the roof if the Senators were located downtown. No, I've seen the Senators. I've followed them from the beginning, and when they put a good product on the ice, that place is sold out. Actually, let me take that back. They don't even have to put a good product on the ice. Last year, they had record crowds. So that argument that they'd be doing better financially by being downtown is a bunch of hogwash, frankly, in my humble opinion. Yeah.
All right, well, that'll wrap things up for today. Thanks everybody for checking it out. Paul, Dayton, thanks for joining me as always. Nice to be back, and I think we're going to be back regularly now. The season's about to get started, training camp and rookie camps and all that fun stuff. So we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Senators Roundtable.